What is your best chuckles I'm in danger story? What happened? Driving through Jasper on our way to Leduc when my dad saw a family on the side of the road looking off into the bush off the side of the road. So we pull over and walk over to ask if they need any help. They say that they saw a bear in there and were throwing rocks at it to get it to come out so they could take pictures. My dad told us to get back to the car and we sped off down the highway. To this day I wonder what happened to those idiots. I used to work in a group home. I was working a night shift and one of the residents was pacing by his room. I asked him what he was doing. He went into his room quickly. I assumed he was on meth since that's what he liked doing. Thought not much of it until a few hours goes by. I go to get some water and heat up my food. And he is standing in the hallway. Again. I ask him how he's doing and try to check in with him. This guy starts speaking in some made up language in a loud whisper. Think Harry Potter talking to the basilisk. He then takes like 4 steps slowly toward me then stops. He says I can't stop him forever. I say duck this. Call police for his and everyone else in the house's safety. Police show up and talk to him for a bit in private. One officer comes back to my office and says yee. He's not himself right now. Said the date was May 50, 2100 it was January, and 2015. They took him away. They also found and took a pocket knife off of him and gave it to me for safekeeping. Now if that wasn't already ducked up, I went back on the security footage and I saw him stand outside of my office door outside my view for like 30 minutes without me realizing. Standing ducking still, like in Paranormal Activity. I checked the camera from when he was speaking the weird language, and he was standing there for like 20 minutes heavy breathing before I walked by. 2 weeks goes by and he's released from the hospital sober and mentally present again. He decided to move out of the house. He came by to grab his stuff and pulled me aside to apologize. I forgave him and tried to brush it off. But he looks me in the eyes and said that he was planning on killing me that night for a blood sacrifice since he was seeing some crazy shit and he believed the demon was controlling him, but the police ruined his plan. I kept the knife as a morbid souvenir. Many years ago, I was on a train going home in the middle of the night. Dead of winter. Heavy snow. Last stop. Shortly after I got on, a friendly train hooligan started up a conversation, and we got onto the topic of psychedelics. I was a bit of a drug addict at the time, so this was common ground. He got up and sat next to me, and the conversation continued. He pulled out a blunt wrapper, started rolling a blunt with a black looking tar, and asked repeatedly if I had ever smoked wet before. I asked what that was, and apparently, it was PCP. Near the end of the ride, he asked if they could walk me home. It was a mild walk, which consisted of going past the shady woods, a cemetery with few lights, a haunted retirement home, and then suburban houses, with certainly no other awake humans at this hour. I repeatedly and politely declined, suddenly becoming aware of the danger I was in. He seemed quite nice. We had a good talk, but getting off the train usually means goodbye. However, he insisted, and since I had no other way of getting home, no money, and being a polite Midwesterner, I accepted his escort. He said he would only walk halfway, and then walk back to the train. We begin our walk in the dark, silent, snowy suburban sprawl. He pulls out the blunt of PCP. I've smoked many a joint with friendly strangers before, but, dude, this was PCP. He asked if I wanted some. No thank you. He lights it, and starts smoking. Our conversation still friendly and jovial, but I knew just how shady this was. He seemed fine, though. Even halfway through his blunt, he asked if I wanted a hit again. Realizing how rare and strange of an opportunity this was, I gave in, and took 3 drags. True to his word, like a gentleman, he walked me exactly halfway, to the edge of my town, where the darkness ended, and the houses began. We said goodbye, and he was gone. The trees were quite wiggly that night. Out hiking in the forest, saw a grizzly bear down at the bottom of a big hill, standing on the other side of a stream. The thing looked beautiful and almost not real. Then it moved, so ducking fast to jump into the stream and start fishing out salmon. and for a second it was beautiful, and then it was terrifying. I let out a gasp and the damned thing looked up at me. I just froze and backed away slowly. I don't know what you're supposed to do in a situation like that, but I'm quite sure if he had wanted me dead, I would have been. Not me, but a really close friend was going through flight school and they were going through emergency procedures, and the instructor asked something along the lines of, "What would you do if you noticed power was lost?" And at that very moment, the aircraft lost power and my buddy said, "Well, that's a neat trick and makes it feel real." To which the instructor said, "No, that's not me. This is real." Apparently my buddy giggled and said, "Oh no," and then they had to crash into the Gulf and he swam away. I can't think of a better example than that. So, just for context, I'm Scottish. I was on holiday in Durham, and it was late afternoon. We just arrived, and we were going to visit the cathedral. So these lads, likely students, they were obviously on a night out or something, came up to me and were like, "Hey, do you know how to get to so and so street?" And I was like, "Sorry, I'm not from here." Suddenly the guy got mad and was all, "Are you Irish? Are you Irish?" And I was like, "No, I'm Scottish," but I was sure I was going to get beaten up because, let's be honest, if he's like this to someone who's Irish, then he'll not exactly be hunky-dory with Scots. But when I said that, his demeanor did a 180 and he was all, "Oh right, you're cool. Sorry to bother you," and walked off. And that's the story of when I was nearly crimed because someone thought I was Irish. Went out for a drink with a pretty girl I got talking to on a bus. She was a bit awkward, but seemed kinda fun. She kept talking about her roommate and the crazy hijinks they got up to. She even joked that we would have a threesome if I went back to her place. We went back to hers, at which point I found out that her roommate was a Barbie doll that she talked to like it was a real person. Her place clearly hadn't been cleaned for years, and the toilet was full of green matter. The final straw for me was when I stepped on her cat's corpse. Couple of years ago I was picking up a chair I had bought from Craigslist. I drove to this guy's house and got a creepy vibe instantly when I stepped inside. For reasons I can't really understand to this day. After a minute or so of small talk, where he was mostly busy staring at me and not completely focused on the conversation, he asked me to follow him down to the basement, where the chair supposedly was. As he went for the staircase, he raised the volume of the music playing to a level that was distinctly louder than normal. I noped the duck out and went straight home again. Freshman year of college. Roommate and I are at a coffee shop near campus fairly late at night and are approached by another woman. She tells us she dropped her phone and can't find it and was wondering if we would call it to help her. Seems odd, but she's not like trying to get in our car with us or anything. She just wanted us to follow her like 3 blocks to this school and call the number while she looked. In hindsight, we should have just gone back to our dorm. But in the moment we thought we were doing a good deed for the day, so we followed this woman to this school. So it's not lit up very well at all, and no one is there because it's probably almost midnight by that point. But we get out of the car and call the number. As we're dialing, the woman walks to a spot and bends to pick the phone up the second it rings, like she knew exactly where it was all along. I'm starting to get bad vibes, but I'm like, whatever. We all start moving towards our cars, and the woman is making small talk, asking us if we go to school at the university, what we want to do, normal stuff. But then she asks which dorm we live in, and red flags immediately got off. My roommate answered her, and she says, "Oh, I used to live there too. What floor?" At that point I'm gripping my roommate's hand and pulled her towards the car. I tell the woman we live on the first floor, a floor that had no dorm rooms, and we get in the car. I immediately book it out of the parking lot before this woman can get back in her car and try to follow us. But the second we turn out of the parking lot, a big blue van pulled in, and a man hopped out to talk to the woman. To this day I'm 99% sure that we narrowly avoided something awful. I honked at the car in front of me to go. The light was green. The dude shot me the bird in his side mirror, probably because I startled him when he was distracted on his phone, and because honking is inherently annoying. so I honked again. I was starting to get mad, and he was too. I could tell by his tail lights that he put the car in park. Then the driver's door opened. I was like, here we go. But then the biggest man I've ever seen stepped out. All those never back down thoughts I had imagined in my head vanished. I chuckled to myself as the word duck escaped my mouth. I had just enough room to reverse and get the duck out of there. I honked again for good measure. Not really, but I thought about it after the fact. Probably would have been funny. I had shitty family when I was growing up, so I decided to run away from my mother, who had kidnapped me, and changed my name to hide me from my father, who had custody, and try to find my father. I put together the kind of runaway kit a child would do, some toys and clothes and stuff. Then I grabbed a flashlight and my bike and started trying to pedal across Washington state at night. I took a very rural route, hoping not to get caught. This is very hilly mountain terrain. The road had many spots where it was cut out of the surrounding area, and there were steep hilly cliffs next to the road because of this. The moon was bright. I was used to the woods, so I was walking in the dark to save my flashlight. I kept hearing rocks and stuff fall down the cliff next to me. I just assumed a deer or something got startled by me, and I didn't care much. I got to an area where the side cliffs flattened out a bit to road level. Whatever was walking up there was now on the same level as me, and it wasn't running away. Not a deer then. I flipped on the flashlight toward the sound. Not 20 feet from me was a cougar. I had just shone a very bright light directly in its face. It crouched down, squinted its eyes, flattened its ears to its head, and made a sound like it was in pain. I had several close encounters with wild animals at that point. It didn't cross my mind to be afraid for some reason. I flipped the light back off and gently started singing. Now that I knew where it was, I could see it in the moonlight. The cougar stayed about the same distance from me and just walked beside me for a couple miles until I went over a bridge, where it left me. I look back with my adult brain and wonder what happened. Was the light offensive enough? It sort of treated me like I was armed. Was my bike foreign enough to make it unsure if it was safe to attack me? Was it just simply not hungry and followed me out of curiosity? I will never know. When I was 13, 14, my father and I went to the Kenai for salmon fishing. We'd lived in Alaska for a while, knew all the bear precautions. I woke up to loud snuffling and snorting right behind my head outside the tent. My brain went bear bear bear, we are duckhead, repeat we are duckhead. I didn't make a sound. Was too scared to even wake my dad. My brain mercifully told myself, you're overreacting. It's just a dog got loose from his campsite. Go back to bed. Basically, I lied myself to sleep. When I stepped out of the tent next morning, my dad said, hey, did you hear our visitor last night? Oh, shit, that wasn't a dream. Then, hesitantly, what was that? Just praying he'd say it was a dog. He just said, you know, and I had a chill down my spine. We went behind the tent, where the snuffling had been, and there was a big pile of fresh bear scat. Without a word or discussion, we started striking camp. We were supposed to be there 3 days, but we weren't going to stay there anymore. During the 3-hour drive home, my dad told me he'd woken up at the same time I did, and he knew immediately what it was, and simultaneously realized we were totally screwed if it came in. We were basically in big sausage casings. We couldn't get out. He wanted to warn me, but he was afraid if he woke me, he didn't know I was awake already, I'd freaking scream. And he thanked me profusely for not doing so, because if I did, that would have been it. This bear had gone into an area inhabited with humans. It must have been human habituated, and therefore, more dangerous. Consider subscribing if you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more of Reddit Universe.